Hello, my name is Becky. I'm owner and baker of Mommy Cakes Catering, and today I'm going to teach you how to make chocolate buttercream, or as my nanny would say, chocolate buttercream, in a very hot climate, by the way, because nobody ever taught me this, and I struggled for the longest time during markets and events that I catered. I had to learn the hard way. So I'm gonna give you some cool tips and tricks today. So for ingredients, you'll need cocoa powder. I like to use the Hershey's brand. Crisco, all vegetable or the real deal stuff. My mom used to use the real deal stuff. I just can't allow myself to eat that animal fat, knowing that it's animal fat, so I use the all vegetable. Powdered sugar, which is also known as confectioner's sugar. Butter, I like to use Challenge butter. It's my favorite brand. And I feel like it holds more for the buttercream. Meringue powder, this is a necessity for hot weather. If you do not use this, then your buttercream will just melt all over your cupcakes. Like it will just deflate as soon as you get outside. And then I like to use vanilla bean paste. This is about $120. It's organic, it's made with real vanilla beans. It's the most authentic stuff that I can find. You will also need a stand mixer, a paddle attachment for beating, 2 bowls, a sifter, a spatula, and measuring cups. And look how beautiful these measuring cups are. My mom made them. Okay, so the first rule of thumb for making buttercream in hot weather is a lot of recipes call for room temperature butter. However, they don't tell you that the room temperature is not the same down south as it is up north. If you think about it, cooler climates, you know, it's gonna be a cooler house naturally, right? So the first thing I do is I put my AC on 73. Room temperature is about 72. At room temperature, the butter is very soft. It's like, it shouldn't be like almost melting. Okay, this has been sitting out for like a day. So you see how that's like way too soft? You see how it's glossy too? It shouldn't be glossy, it should be matte, kind of like the new paint jobs that you're seeing all over the new cars, like the matte paint jobs. It has a sheen to it, but it's not glossy. That's what the butter should look like. You can also do the thumb test, which is where pretty much you just stick your finger right here, and if it's firm and still leaves the indent from your finger, then it's perfect. You see how this one isn't glossy? It looks matte, but it also has its sheen. So the temperature of the butter is very, very important. And sometimes when it gets too soft after I leave it out, like if I don't catch it at the perfect time, I'll have to put it in the refrigerator for like 5 or 10 minutes, like this still isn't ready. So I've got to put this back and let it wait. While I wait for the butter to cool down a little bit and firm up, I'm gonna sift the confectioner's sugar. Now, when I first started, I used to read the recipes for the buttercream. Now I don't, because I found that down here in Florida, I need to use a little bit more sugar than what the recipe calls for, because the more sugar you use, the more firm the buttercream will be. I also don't like my buttercream super sweet because I feel like cake is already sweet on its own. So in order to counter the sweetness of the confectioner's sugar, I put a little bit more salt. So what inspired me to do this video is my friend Courtney. She just did a video on like cutting soap, because she makes her own soap. And she had a few questions about buttercream like a year ago when she was making her son a birthday cake. I've been doing this for about 3 years. It's not a super long time, but it's enough to know the tips and tricks and kind of perfect it. So obviously you want to wash your hands before you do this, because you're touching food, right? And so the rule of thumb is for 1 stick of butter, you use 1 cup of confectioner's sugar. So I'm using 2 sticks of butter, which is 1/2 cup each, okay? And then I'm using 1 cup of Crisco, which is equivalent to 2 sticks. So altogether, I'm supposed to use 4 cups of confectioner's sugar. However, I always do about 4.5 and kind of slowly add the last half to see if my buttercream is at the consistency that I need it to be. Okay, so I've sifted my 4.5 cups of confectioner's sugar. I also sifted 3/4 cup of cocoa. I like to sift everything because if not, it comes out pretty clumpy when you mix it together. So right now, my butter is done. So I'm going to unwrap it and put it in the mixer. As you can tell, the mixer has frost on it. That's because I found that if I put the mixing bowl in the freezer for like 5 minutes, it helps to keep the buttercream more cool. And then if I forget to do this step, I always have like an ice pack. Sometimes I wrap it around so that the butter doesn't get too warm during the mixing process. So I just put my 2 sticks in here. Now I'm going to do 2 1/2 cups or 1 full cup of Crisco. And then we're going to beat it for about 3 to 4 minutes. I like to try to beat it for longer because it gives it a lighter and fluffier consistency. And I feel like the Crisco gives a better texture in your mouth as well. Putting the paddle attachment on, closing it, making sure it's locked. I've made that mistake a million times. Now we're just gonna beat it on like medium high. So when the butter starts getting like creamy looking, light, fluffy, that's when I like to put the salt in. I usually use 1/2 of a teaspoon, but I kind of eyeball it because I used 1 stick of salted butter and 1 stick of unsalted butter. And that's just so that I don't have to use as much salt, because sometimes when you eat the buttercream, you get this, like these salt granules in your mouth. Some people like it, some people don't. Halfway through the mixing process, you should always scrape down the side of the bowl with a spatula and put it all in the middle and then restart the beating process. So it's almost right. It should be like halfway. It almost looks like cream or whipped cream. And that's the perfect consistency that we want. So we're gonna stop it there, and then we're gonna add the sugar and try not to get butter on it. So my mother bought me this lovely guard so that I don't get sugar all over my countertops, because I'm the messiest baker that there is. So I'm gonna put it on very low while I add the sugar in. And you don't wanna add too much at a time. Just wanna kind of add it slowly. And turn it down and then turn it up once the sugar is in. If you put the mixer on medium or high and then put the sugar in, it's literally gonna fly up everywhere. So it looks like it's pretty much incorporated. And I'm doing it by 1/2 cups, about, not exactly. So as soon as the powdered sugar looks incorporated, add more. So this cake is pretty special because I'm making it for my lovely hubby. It was his birthday yesterday, and we are cutting cake this Saturday. So he requested yellow cake with chocolate buttercream, and that's exactly what he's gonna get. Sometimes I put it on faster just to incorporate it faster once the sugar is already in. So I wanted to show you the consistency that it's at now. So right now it's barely coming off the spoon, and that's pretty much what you want. So I'm only gonna add 1 more 1/2 cup of sugar, but this time I'm going to put 2 tablespoons of the meringue powder in the last half cup, and this will help the buttercream hold together. So as you can see, the meringue powder is in with the confectioner's sugar, and I'm just going to add that to my buttercream. And just to let you know, Crisco has a higher melting temperature than butter does. So butter will usually melt around like 82 degrees. Crisco will be like at the high 90s. Okay, so that's done. Look, it's not even moving, right? It's very stiff but creamy. It's not coming off of my spatula, which is great. That's the consistency that we want it in Florida. And I'm going to taste it, see if it needs more salt. I'm going to scrape the bowl, and then we're going to add the cocoa powder. Okay, so the salt is perfect in here. I'm going to put it on slow again and start adding the vanilla and cocoa powder. I like to use 2 tablespoons of vanilla. I feel like vanilla just gives it a nice warm background flavor. This is really strong, so maybe 1.5, but if you're using regular vanilla extract, I would always try to go with the pure, and I would also use 2 tablespoons, especially because chocolate in itself is very strong when you're just using the cocoa powder. So I'm going to slowly add this because this will get bitter if I add too much. And I'm not adding the whole thing. I'm doing little bits at a time. I'm doing the same exact thing that I did with the confectionery sugar. And don't worry about overdoing it. It's pretty hard to do. And then I'm going to taste a little bit of it. And if I like it, then I'll stop there. If I don't, then I'll add more. That's the cool thing about buttercream. You make it the way that you want. Okay, so sometimes when you make buttercream, you get like little crystals in your mouth from the meringue powder, or from the sugar, or from the cocoa powder. And you really want a creamy consistency in your mouth. So the way that we get rid of the crystallization is using a little bit of cream. And usually for one batch of buttercream, it's about 2 tablespoons. So I just like to add it slowly. And I kind of eyeball it just because I have a little bit more experience. But if you're starting out, I would definitely use a measuring spoon. Until you whip it again, and then it's like a fluffy cloud of heaven. Once you're done with the buttercream, you can put it in an airtight container or a like plastic bag, maybe a Ziploc bag if you have one, or a piping bag would be good. Make sure it's tied correctly. That will stay in the freezer for up to 3 months. Or in the refrigerator for up to 3 days. Just make sure that before you use it, after it's thawed out, you put it in the mixer again to fluff it back up. And then just to recap, there are 3 things that you need to remember if you're making buttercream in hot weather. So the first one is that room temperature is not the same in every climate. Make sure that the butter is firm and sheen, not soft and glossy. Number 2 is you have to make sure you use meringue powder because that's what holds the buttercream together. And then number 3, it's helpful to use half Crisco and half butter because Crisco has a higher melting point, but at the same time, you don't want to get rid of that butter flavor that everybody loves in buttercream, or else what's the point? So I hope that you enjoyed this video. I had fun making it, and I just hope that everybody has a sweet day. Thanks.